My name is Charlotte.
My name is Woody Stemple.
We both had a calling to be missionaries to the country of Vietnam. The year was 1964, and very few people had heard of Vietnam, even the Indo-Chinese Peninsula. We didn't know where we were going to go, but a pastor came from a province called Quang Ngai, which was about an hour south of Da Nang by road, but you couldn't go by road because the war had begun by then. And so he came to us and said, "We desperately need you to come to Quang Ngai for 3 reasons." And the first reason was, the war is worse there than anywhere else, and people are dying, and they need to know the good news about heaven. The second reason is, we are short-handed on workers. We have a whole province, and we only have 4 pastors, student pastors, and the main church in town. And he said, the third reason is, we heard you've been trying to have children and have been unsuccessful. And we had been. We'd had several losses early in pregnancy. And he said, if you come to Quang Ngai and drink the water, you'll get pregnant. So we moved to Quang Ngai, and all 3 things were true. But by the time we got there and started to live there, the road was cut in many places by the Viet Cong, so we couldn't really travel by road. Every morning, before we could go out of our house, the Vietnamese mine sweepers went down the highway to check the roads for mines, and when it was all clear, then we could drive out on the highway. Viet Cong all planted pressure mines under the roads in many places. Almost every day there were cars exploded.
Many times we went out into the country visiting just church people, and the pastor would take us along. He would kind of escort us. By going out and visiting these other churches, we found ways that we could help them. Sometimes in food supplies, sometimes in church supplies. We were just working alongside the churches there in our province.
One day my Vietnamese girlfriend and I were going out to teach in a camp. We were teaching about 1,000 children out there. And we rode our bicycles out. It was about 5 miles outside of town. And we rode out to the camp, and as we went into the camp, going down the road, there were 100 GI trucks parked along the side of the road, American military trucks. And they were all yelling at us and hollering at us because they had no idea who we were, but they could see I was Western. So they were hollering, "Hello, hello," and we were riding by as fast as we could, and we went in and we taught for them. We were in there for about 2 or 3 hours. We came back, and the trucks are still parked along the side of Route 1 there. And I said, "Oh no." And I decided, wait a minute, I can talk to these boys, you know. So I stopped and started talking to them, and I had 100 drivers leave their trucks, and they said, "Where did you go?" And we said, "We went down to that refugee camp." They said, "We're sitting here waiting for tanks to escort us down this highway, and you rode down there on your bicycle." And we said, "Yeah, we did." There was bombing going every night from ships offshore. In fact, here at Shell Point, in the church choir, there was a man who was a Navy commander who found out we lived in Quang Ngai and couldn't believe it. He said, "We bombed that province every night." We said, "Well, thankfully you missed us."
He said to us, after he explained what they were doing, he said, "We didn't know you were there." And our reply was, "We knew you were there." We could hear machine guns. We mostly heard cannons. And the shells would go over our house on the way out to the outlying areas, and they would just be a swoosh, 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 swoosh. And that's when she would say, "Is that incoming or outgoing?" I said, "Outgoing, but I hope they don't have a short round."
Well, our life was always in danger because we lived in this very volatile place. But we really felt confident, number 1, in God. Number 2, people were all praying for us because Vietnam was on the war every day on the TVs at home. And people would say, "Pray for Charlotte," when it was on the TV, you know, everyone that knew was praying for us. So we were there, and they opened a little USO. So Bob Hope was coming to town. There was a lot of excitement. He was coming out to the air base. my girlfriend and I, another missionary and I, and her husband decided to go out and see the Bob Hope show. And all of a sudden the general came out. He said, we need help. The girls there need help getting dressed. Can you go in and help these girls get dressed? Because there's nobody else we can ask. And they're standing there and they're saying, do you have an iron? Well, I said, well, we don't have an iron and we don't know where to get one. Plus there's no electricity out here. So, they said, oh, no, how can we iron this? I said, no one is going to notice the wrinkles on the clothes. And then the general came back and said, did you have a seat? And we said, no, we didn't have a seat. He says, here, I got a seat for you. And he had saved 10 chairs. Everybody else is on the ground, but there's 10 chairs and there's 2 left, empty. And so we tiptoed over all these sitting people and sat down right in front of the stage on 2 chairs that had front row seat for the Bob Hope show. The amazing thing is that in times that are volatile and times that are so temporary and your life is always on the thin edge of leaving, people are very, very welcome to the good news of the gospel. And so many, many people came to faith in Christ. Number one, he called us. A sense of calling is a strong thing in whatever you do. And number two, he sustained us. And number three, so many people were praying for us.